A very warm welcome to all of you. Today I'm going to be taking a lecture on occupational hazards. In lieu with recent events, especially the COVID-19 pandemic, now dealing with this topic is more crucial than ever. So, I will be dealing about how to take precautionary measures for the COVID-19 pandemic in the later slides. But yes, this is a very important topic, and I hope you all gain some knowledge by the end of this lecture. Okay, so before we start about the occupational hazards, you need to know about the governing body which actually decides whether a particular event is classified as an occupational hazard. So you have to know about the Occupational Safety and Hazard Health Act. So this body was established in 1970 after it was seen all over the world that there were a lot of events which are happening at different workplaces. So it's not just for the medical fraternity; it's a governing body for any occupation, as a matter of fact. So they recorded a lot of events which have been taking place around the globe where the employers were being a little careless, or there was no proper action taken against the workplace when it was not considered safe. The employees were getting hurt repeatedly. They were in constant danger, because of which this body was created, so that the workplace can be deemed safe for any and all employees. So it enforces the protection in the workplace. It enforces safety and health standards as well. So it provides information, training, and assistance to employers and workers. So uh, it enforces the employers to actually hand out training, not just for the employers themselves, but also for the employees, so that they know how to prevent mishaps from occurring at the workplace, and also what is to be done if, God forbid, something actually happens. So, under the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the employers have the responsibility to provide a safe workplace. So now they are held accountable in case something happens. So earlier on, when this governing body was not there, the employers were actually getting away with it, and even if there was a loss of life, nobody could demand for justice the right way. So now the employers are held liable if something does happen in the workplace, because of which everybody has to take this seriously. Of course it is, because it's dealing with lives. Okay, so what are the rights and responsibilities which the employers must follow? They should follow all the relevant OSHA safety and health standards. You can actually go up to the OSHA website. You just have to type it on Google, and they have a long list of safety and health standards which can be followed. They have a different page for the dental and medical fraternity as well. So you can actually read about it in detail if you are interested. So this will come into play especially when you set up your own practice. Also when you are going to be working under somebody, so you should be knowing what you are entitled to. So you cannot just sue anybody for no rhyme or reason. But God forbid something does happen at your workplace because of the neglect of your employer, you should know what your rights are, and you should know how to safeguard yourself and your health also. So you can actually read about it in detail. So the employers must find and correct safety and health hazards. So if there is a health hazard at the workplace, it should be clearly labeled, and training should be given as to how to prevent any hazard around that environment. Yeah. It should inform the employer should inform the employees about the chemical hazards through training, labels, alarms, color coded systems, chemical information sheets, and other methods. So this applies to dentistry as well, because we do deal with a lot of chemicals, especially during the time of sterilization, disinfection, even when we are dealing with the root canal irrigants, or even when we are dealing with the prostocomponents, that is your monomer and polymer. So they're all harmful chemicals. So you should know what you're dealing with and how you should prevent any mishap from. So as of Jan 2015, the OSHA has made it mandatory to notify OSHA within 8 hours of a workplace fatality, or within 24 hours of any work-related inpatient hospitalization, amputation, or loss of an eye. So these are very grave mishaps which can occur. So you have to regulate, you have to inform this regulatory body if any mishap does occur, so that they can take the necessary action. You should provide required personal protective equipment at no cost to your workers. So this has to be borne by the employees, the employers, not the employees. Okay, so the employee should not be charged for the personal protection equipment according to OSHA. Keep accurate records of work related injuries and illnesses. This has to be documented because the new employees have a right to know whether certain mishaps have occurred before or not. So because they are going to be working there in future, so they have a right to know whether they find it safe as a workplace, and whether they are actually interested in taking on that risk themselves. You have to post OSHA citations, injury and illness summaries, and relevant data at your workplace, so that the workers or your employees can actually see them. Yeah. And if God forbid and any untoward incident or mishap does occur at the workplace, and your employee wishes to take legal action, you do not, as an employer, you do not have the right to retaliate against them. It is their right to, it is their right by law to actually complain to the OSH Act. Employees have the right to working conditions that do not pose a risk of serious harm. They should they have the right to receive information and training about chemical and other hazards, methods to prevent harm, and the standards of OSHA which apply to their workplace. So these are all the rights which they are entitled to. So you cannot deny them as employers. They should be allowed to review the records of work related injuries and illnesses. This is what I was talking to you about. So before they actually wish to join your workplace, they have a right to know whether some work related fatality has occurred. You do not have the right to hide it from them. Yeah, get copies of test results done to find and measure hazards in the workplace. So they actually have the right to go to OSHA and request them to conduct tests to find out whether it is a safe workplace or not. They have the right to file a complaint against OSHA to inspect the workplace if they believe that there is a serious hazard which can take place over there, or they also have the right to file a complaint if they find that their employer is not compliant with the OSHA rules. Yeah, and they can use these rights without retaliation. So if an employee is fired, or something shady has occurred, they are demoted or they are transferred because of using their rights under this law, they can file a complaint within 30 days to OSHA, and of course OSHA will take the necessary action. Okay, so coming to the dental office, what are the various occupational hazards which one can face? The first one which I have quoted here is the occupational hazard related to your eyes. So the activator lights which you use to cure your resin composites, they can be deadly if you do not follow the necessary precautions. So you're not supposed to be staring directly at the light, neither you nor the patient. Of course, the patient is always going to be wearing the protective eyewear, which we always ensure that the patient is wearing. And you are also supposed to be using the face shield as well, so that the glare is not causing direct damage to your retinas. So direct exposure in the band of 400 to 450 nanometer. So this is the blue light which we are using to cure our composites. They can cause retinal damage. So to prevent them, you can use your amber colored. So in the photos, if you can see, they are actually amber colored. So this actually reflects the bit better, and it reduces the strain on your eyes. The second is the soft and hard tissue lasers. So we have the soft tissue lasers in the department of periodontics. So if you are going to be using your soft tissue lasers, yes, you have to use your protective eyewear. You would have seen the amber colored eyeglasses also which is present, which has to be used when you are using this. So this is another example of your amber colored glasses. This is found to have proven best reflection from or protection from your laser. The next which we are dealing with is your noise pollution. So your high speed turbines, air rotors and micromotors, they do generate a lot of noise, especially in the olden times. So in the olden times, the compressors were kept within the work, right near your chair, and the air rotors were not as efficient as they are now. So the noise from faulty compressors, faulty scalers, and faulty air rotors also was quite high. So this can cause ear damage, which may not be reversible all the time. So it can cause tinnitus, that is a ringing sensation in your ear, irritability, hearing impairment, and headaches. Headaches are the most common. So how do you prevent this? You have to continue to maintain your handpieces, and not just your handpieces, but your air rotor turbines and your compressors as well. You can soundproof your work environment. You can issue earplugs, but earplugs issue can pose a problem because your patient may not hear you when you are actually trying to communicate with the patient during the treatment. So it's a double-edged sword if you issue earplugs. And like I said before, you can use the sound absorbers, so you can actually soundproof your ceilings and the walls in your environment. So if you soundproof a room and you keep your compressor inside, it's as good as noise cancellation. So you will not be able to hear it, and it will not cause any damage. The need of the hour right now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, is the aerosols. So you will be dealing with aerosol generating procedures from now on. It's going to be a day-to-day term which is going to be implemented in the clinics now. So you might as well get used to it. So AGP should not catch you off guard. It is nothing but an aerosol generating procedure. Okay. So aerosols are extremely dangerous because they contain oral fluids also. They can actually transmit oral fluids. They can spread oral fluids, blood, dental materials, powder, latex from your gloves, and dust from metals as well. So aerosols are extremely dangerous. They can contaminate, and they can cause the spread of diseases as well. So you have to have the proper PPE, personal protective equipment, not just for yourself but for your assistant and the patient as well, to prevent the spread of diseases via aerosols. What you can do is, to prevent, you can use your high volume suction. You have to use your PPE, that is your face mask, your eyewear, your face shield, the proper masks, gowns, yeah, and proper isolation. So you can use your rubber dams, you can use cotton rolls, you can use high volume suction, yeah, and you can modify your dental treatment as well. So you can do your polishing using slow speed. However, I must warn you, when you're doing polishing at slow speed for long periods of time, you're actually increasing the temperature of the restoration. That of course is going to transmit that high temperature to your tooth, so you are actually causing trauma to your pulp. So you cannot use the slow speed for a very long time. Use gentle water stream, of course, to it plays two roles. One is to cool down the temperature, and also it helps to flush out the aerosol, which can be sucked in using your high volume suction. Yeah. Next, coming to your X-ray radiation, this I'm sure you'll be it would have been covered in your year 4. So it's just a simple revision for you guys. So the amount of exposure taken in a single IOPA is actually only 0.00125 millisievert. So I'm sure you know that millisievert is the unit which is used to measure X-ray radiation. So the International Commission on Radiological Protection, the ICRP, has stated that an annual equivalent dose of 150 millisievert for the lens of your eyes and 500 millisievert for all other organs including your skin is recommended. So actually speaking, the patients are not at any risk when you are taking your IOPAs. It is more of the dental fraternity which are at risk for X-ray radiation. However, if you calculate and see from the single IOPA dose, which is 0.00125, and you calculate it even for the annual equivalent dose limit for your eye, that is 150 millisievert, you can actually take somewhere around a little more than 80,000 IOPAs in a year. So it is considered as one of the low cases of radiation damage when you take your IOPAs, and even lesser when you shift from your analog to your digital IOPA. So this IOPA exposure is because of your traditional I mean your traditional IOPAs. So if you convert it into your digital IOPA exposure, it is even lesser. So the chances of X-ray radiation damage is even lesser when you shift to your digital IOPs. Yeah. So that is your RVG, your radiovisiograph. So the patient is not at risk, but of course the dental healthcare personnel, especially those who are working in the department of oral medicine and radiology, they have to wear the TLD badges, the thermoluminescent dosimeter badges, which have to be going in for a review to the labs every 3 or 6 months, where they actually measure the amount of radiation the person is exposed to, and they state whether the person is safe or not, or whether they have to take some particular precautions. Some of the short-term effects, that is, if you are exposed to large doses for a short period of time, some of the short-term effects can be nausea, vomiting, loss of hair, and diarrhea. Whereas the long-term effects are if you are continuously subject to smaller doses for long periods of time. So this can lead to carcinogenesis, that is the formation of cancer cells in your body. It can have an effect on the embryos, so pregnant women are more susceptible. Can lead to cataract formation, and it can lead to genetic effects also, and blood cancers like leukemia. So this happens over a long period of time, say 10 to 15 years or longer. So that is why the dental personnel have to wear TLD badges, for continuous monitoring to prevent these kind of mishaps. The oral cavity, the changes which you can see mucositis, oral candidiasis, loss of taste sensation, reduction in your salivary flow, your pH becomes more acidic, and you can see radiation induced caries, that is your osteoradionecrosis. Of course, all of this happens only over a long period of time, so it's not something which will happen instantly. So what are the protective measures you can ensure so that you do not subject yourself to radiation effects? I'm sure you're all practicing all of this in your clinics. You should not be holding the film during your exposure. You can ask the patient to actually hold on to the film after you position it into the correct slot. Do not stabilize the X-ray machine during exposure. So you should just walk out of the room after you have positioned it, and you can just shoot it from outside. Do not come directly in the path of primary radiation. This is why we ask everyone to go out of the X-ray room as soon as the X-ray has been the IOPA film has been stabilized in the patient's mouth and the X-ray tube is also stabilized. If you do not wish to exit the room, you should at least be standing behind a lead barrier. And like I said before, the TLD badges have to be monitored periodically. As far as I know, it's every 3 months or 6 months. Yeah, you can use lead aprons and collars for the patients, especially the pregnant women. The use of lead aprons and collars is mandatory even for thyroid patients, because the thyroid tends to soak up radiation faster than all other organs. Coming to mercury poisoning, so now because we are not dealing much with amalgam restorations, this has come down a lot, because mercury poisoning generally happens when you're storing mercury for amalgam restorations. So this has come down considerably. However, you may join workplaces where amalgam is still being used, so it is always good for you to know. These are the possible side effects you can get with acute and chronic toxicity. However, you should know no patient has ever suffered and passed away because of mercury toxicity. So your amalgam restorations are totally safe, because the amount of mercury which is expelled from these amalgam restorations have been found to be bare minimal, and they are not fatal. The only dental personnel who has actually passed away because of mercury toxicity is a person who was actually trying to triple distill mercury, and the entire liquid actually fell on him. So this was a long time back, and that is the only reason why a person has actually died because of mercury toxicity. Otherwise, mercury is totally safe. Now coming to the prevention, if you are going to be storing mercury or amalgam fillings, you cannot just dispose of mercury and amalgam in the normal dustbins. So you should store it in a location near a vent or a window so that the mercury vapors, does not actually circulate in your workplace. Maintain high airflow in and out. Scrap amalgam should be collected under spent X-ray fixer. This is the best solution to actually, collect your amalgam restorations. Water and glycerin not so much, but spent X-ray fixer is the best solution which you can use to collect your scrap amalgam. So once you know that your X-ray fixer has become ineffective, you don't need to discard it. You can actually use it to collect your amalgam restorations. Your spent capsules and cotton rolls should not be thrown with the regular trash and should be stored in tightly packed plastic containers or closed bags. Yeah, because we do not want to contaminate the environment as well. Please remember, the easiest way to manage a mercury spill is to use sulfur powder. So the minute you see that mercury has spilt on the floor, please do not try to use a vacuum cleaner, because the fan of the vacuum cleaner will actually dispel the mercury vapors into the environment. So that can be toxic. So what you have to do is you immediately sprinkle sulfur powder onto a mercury spill. What happens with sulfur is it tends to clump up your mercury spill because of the formation of mercury sulfide. And this mercury sulfide can actually be collected and dispensed off easier. To collect mercury drops is very difficult because it will just keep rolling and it cannot be absorbed. So you have to sprinkle sulfur powder, okay, because it starts to clump, or it just accumulates in one place. It does not roll anymore. Okay, now coming to the guidelines for minimizing your hazards in the dental office. Keep minimal hazardous chemicals in the office. That is the easiest way. Prevention is better than cure. Read the labels and use only as directed. So information is power. You have to know what you're dealing with. Store chemicals only in their original containers. There's a reason why certain chemicals are kept in dark bottles. It's so that it does not react with light and cause any potential damage. Keep the containers tightly closed so that even if the container is overturned, it does not cause any leakage. Avoid mixing chemicals unless the consequences are known. The most common example I can think of at the top of my head is the mixing of chlorhexidine and sodium hypochlorite. When you are doing your routine endodontic treatment, you should know that the mixing of chlorhexidine with sodium hypochlorite can result in the formation, it will result in the formation of an orangish precipitate, that is parachloroaniline. This has been found to be toxic and carcinogenic. However, studies are still going on. There are two schools of thought. One says that it is carcinogenic, one says that it is not. But why take a risk when it has been speculated that it can be carcinogenic? Yes, so this is why you should never mix the two. There should always be a saline flush in between them. Okay, wear appropriate PPE. This is what I have been stressing since the beginning of this lecture, and you of course are all following the proper hand washing techniques which are posted in all the cubicles in the class. Prevent your cross infection. So now you know that droplet spread can cause the spread of tuberculosis, pneumonia, and now COVID also. Through saliva and blood, yes, COVID can spread through saliva. However, studies have shown that through blood transfusions, COVID is not being spread as of now. So studies are still going on. But till now, they have studies have suggested that COVID does not spread through blood transfusions. So you of course have to worry about hepatitis, syphilis, and AIDS. Manipulation of hand instruments. This is why we ask everyone to use the one hand scoop technique, because we do not want needle prick injuries. Of course, you do know that if there is a needle prick injury, you have to inform the authorities after you actually thoroughly wash the pricked site, and you try to sterilize it as much as you can with your betadine solution, and you make sure that you have washed it with Dettol, and then of course you have to go for your test to find out whether you are safe, or whether you especially after using the needles. If while closing the needles or while disposing of the needles, you have to check, and you get the prick, you have to check, you have to be tested for, all your viral pathogens. Okay. So even your utility knives, please be careful when you're packing them and sending them for sterilization. During suturing, you have to make sure that you don't injure yourself, and of course your syringe needle when you're capping it after your procedure. So how do you prevent it? You have to practice safer work measures, safer instrument designs are appreciated, and you have to continually update yourself, as to whether something else has come up in the market on how to prevent certain injuries. Now, coming to dental ergonomics, this is the need of the hour, because most of the dentists, their common complaint is back pain. That is because of poor posture, and because of sitting in the dental chair for long periods of time. So it can cause fatigue, backache, diseases of joints, and muscle strain and impairment of the worker's health inevitably. Yeah. So how do you prevent this? Yeah, this also leads to stress and burnout. So how do you prevent your musculoskeletal disorders? There are certain exercises which can be done in the dental workplace. So you can see them in the diagrammatic representation below. You can actually practice this in between patients. So as soon as you finish the treatment on one patient and you're waiting for the next one, you can actually practice these exercises which are shown in the figures below. Take regular breaks during your work hours. Don't sit in one posture for long periods of time. Try to stand in between your procedures, not in between, that is after your procedures. Of course, when you are doing a procedure which requires you to be sitting, especially your endodontic treatment, please do not try to stand in between them. Reposition your feet. Try to move around as much as you can. Position patients at the proper height so that you can prevent your musculoskeletal disorders. Avoid twisting as much because it leads to stress on spine. Now coming to the OSHA regulations for COVID-19. So OSHA has, as of March 2020, OSHA has recommended the following steps to protect the employees. So encourage your workers to stay home if you are sick. Of course, this does not mean that you take undue advantage. Please call up your employees only if there is a genuine sickness which needs to be reported. Maximize the use of telemedicine for non-emergency consultations. So this is something which you are going to be seeing now once you come into the clinics. We will not be dealing with patients on day-to-day basis. I mean on walk-in basis. We will only be giving appointments unless and until emergency situations have to be dealt with. Yeah. Install physical barriers or partitions between patient treatment areas. This also will be put into consideration now into the clinics once you resume your dental practice. Provide adequate ventilation. This is very, very important. So sitting continuously in your workplace under aircon is considered bad because your air is not being it's not fresh air which is being pumped in, but it is only the same airflow which is being circulated again and again. So that is very dangerous. So that needs to be modified. Frequently clean and disinfect your surfaces and equipment with hospital grade products. So what we in our workplace are going to be doing is we are going to be sterilizing and disinfecting your workplace with sodium hypochlorite 1% or 100 ppm. 1000 ppm. So what we are going to be using is our sodium hypochlorite, and of course we are going to be using the previously used disinfectants also, yeah, to sterilize our workplace. Minimize the number of staff which is present when your AGP is being performed, your aerosol generating procedures are performed, so that not everyone is going to be susceptible to infection. And ensure the staff who are present in the workplace to be appropriately protected using the PPE. And then of course you have to provide your personal protective equipment such as your eye goggles, face shields, your N95 respirators, your gowns, etc., to the dental practitioners as well as the support personnel. Encourage the workers to report any safety and health concerns which they may be facing. Now the OSHA has categorized the dental work tasks to lower, medium, high risk and very high risk procedures. So the low risk procedures are those who are performing only administrative duties and are in no way coming in contact with the clinics. The medium risk personnel are those who provide urgent or emergency dental care and are not involved with AGP procedures in patients who are well and who are not known or suspected COVID-19 patients. However, as of now, whenever you are dealing with a patient, it is always better to deal with a patient as if the patient is a known or infected COVID-19 patient. So you have to follow the procedure for the high or the very high risk, so that the risk of infection or transmission of COVID-19 is minimalized. Okay, so we are going to be dealing with all patients as if they are known or suspected COVID-19 patients. Okay. The high risk employees are those who enter a known or suspected COVID-19 patient room or care area, or they are providing emergency dental care to known or suspected COVID-19 patient, or they are performing AGPs on healthy patients. The very high risk category come to the employees or the dental healthcare fraternity who are performing AGPs on known or suspected COVID-19 patients, and who are collecting or handling specimens from known or suspected COVID-19 patients. Now, what does OSHA recommend the PPE during the COVID-19 pandemic? So, for the healthy patients, they are categorized under dental procedures not involving AGP. So, this AGP is now going to be a very commonly used term. So, you are either in the AGP section or the non-AGP section. The AGP is nothing but your aerosol generating procedures. So, the dental procedures not involving AGPs, you have to have work clothing such as scrubs, lab coats and or smocks, a gown, gloves, eye protection, face masks, etc. And the dental procedures which may or may not generate aerosols, you require your gloves, gowns, eye protections, and N95 filters. Coming to treating patients who are suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cases, the dental procedures are again categorized into not involving AGP and involving AGP. So those who are not involving AGPs, you have to of course still have your gloves, gowns, eye protections, and your N95 masks. And those who may or are known COVID-19 patients, you have to have gloves, gowns, eye protections, that is your goggles, face shields, and your N95 masks as well. So, irrespective of whether you consider the patient to be a known COVID-19 or not a COVID-19 patient, you have to use all your personal protective equipment stated now. This is to prevent the spread of COVID-19 from your workplace. Yes. So, in conclusion, dental practice is conducted in an environment when there is a constant risk to not only the healthcare personnel but also to the patients as well, because you can spread in or transmit infections. So, healthcare workers should keep themselves constantly updated regarding various techniques to minimize or prevent occupational hazards. So, I hope this lecture has brought into light certain issues which are issues of the hour and in need. If not, if you have certain doubts, please do contact me. Please feel free to contact me, and we can discuss about the occupational hazards in detail if required, if there is something which needs to be discussed. Okay, so that's all from my side now. Please feel free to post comments or get in touch with me if you have any doubts. Thank you very much. Take care. Stay safe.